Wizards of the Coast has just released a brand new batch of Innistrad Midnight Hunt spoilers. So today, we're going to take a look at rares and mythic rares that are truly horrific.
The Magic Historian.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we are here to do something delightful. Enjoy brand new Magic cards that intersect with the concept of being absolutely horrific. So, if you haven't already heard about the Innistrad story, there is a lore video on my other channel, Fantasy Geographic, going into the background, the horrifying nature of what's going on Innistrad. I will leave a link at the end of this video for you to check it out if you so desire. That being said, let us start off our proceedings with the hostile hostile. And I do love names that play around this way, right? It is a cool little concept. Hostile means it's not friendly, and hostile is another description for like an inn, right? Or something along those lines. That seems like a fairly apt way to describe it. So, what does the hostile hostile do? Well, it taps to add a colorless mana, shock and surprise, or pay 1 mana, sacrifice a creature, put a soul counter on hostile hostile, then if there are 3 or more soul counters on it, remove those counters, transform it, then untap it. Activate only as a sorcery. I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of got that Hotel California vibe to it. So it's like you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. This is a building that will devour you and trap your souls within it. Or perhaps the building doesn't itself devour you, but anyone who loses their life inside this building, it ensnares the soul and traps them. And it makes you wonder, who originally resided here? Was this a hostel that was actually created to be a place for a number of people to come to and spend the night with this nefarious purpose? Was this originally some lord's manor or something? Because if you look at the artwork, the building itself is very imposing. It looks like it would have been built by somebody with considerable wealth. So you could have a scenario where either it was intentionally created to be this sort of soul nexus where it draws in the life energy of anybody who's foolish enough to spend the night, or it could just be it was created by some evil lord back in the day for other purposes. Maybe the people who originally created this had awful intentions in mind, created this setup in the basement where they used to sacrifice spirits and the soul power would be trapped in the walls. You'd hear them moaning and screaming in the night. These cards that we're going to talk about today all have a great flavor that lends itself well towards Halloween. It's too bad we're not in October right now because it's totally got that vibe. But anyways, it could be a scenario where this building was intentionally created to trap souls, and then the lord who lived here was destroyed by, who knows, maybe demons they summed up, run off by local villagers, whatever it is. Maybe this place lay dormant for a long time. Somebody else was able to acquire the property, always wanted to open up an inn, and then turns out, oops, you got the inn that swallows people's souls like Army of Darkness. I'll swallow your soul. Come get some. You guys like that movie? It's good times. Anyways, a lot of random references today. We got the Eagles. We got Ash from Army of Darkness. Anyhow, you could have either of those scenarios, which add some cool flavor. And I like the fact that this building is shown kind of in this swampy kind of wasteland as well, where it's not exactly near any settlements. So it could be a scenario where they just take advantage of, if you're within a certain radius and need a place to stay at night, we are your only choice. But regardless, very funky. Once it has 3 souls in it, then it comes to life and it becomes the Creeping Inn, which is a fun play on words as well. It's creeping on in to get you. Although I don't know how it can creep. Look at it. It's 3/7. It's like a crazy variation of Baba Yaga's hut. You know what I'm talking about from D&D? It's like a hut with gigantic chicken legs. I mean, this isn't the same, but it's got somewhat of the same vibe. It has all these crazy appendages. Like, look at how many arms and legs did it have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I count 6. I count 6 limbs on this, which isn't enough for it to be like a spider, but to give that kind of spider-ish aspect to it. And who knows, maybe it has a couple more legs. Either way, it gives it an insectile kind of vibe, gives it obviously the concept that it is like a living being. Now, it's a horror construct, which is a funky idea. It honestly isn't that super horrific just when you look at it at first. Like, when you're just like, oh cool, it's a house that's walking around. But the atmosphere they've created with the background darkness, what looks like a bunch of bats flying away. And actually, now that I think about it, if you look at the front part of the inn, it does actually kind of look like a face. You've got the two lit up eyes, and this lit up area down here almost looks like it has teeth, kind of a little like a grimace going on. So it does actually have a face that you can see, which ramps up the horror levels. Imagine this thing making its way towards you and you knowing there's zero chance you're going to get away from it. Now, what does the card do? Whenever Creeping In attacks, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of creature cards exiled with Creeping In. So, this is pretty crazy. This is where the real horror comes from, because this inn is not only awakened and wandering around, it's eating corpses and drawing their life force into it. It, like, you start out by sacrificing souls to it, and then it starts drawing in more souls, and you may be able to, like, one of these gigantic limbs plows down into the earth, and then you can see a geist flowing up through it, screaming as it's drawn into the house to join the chorus of wails that emanates from this as it trundles forwards. It's so intense, and it can literally disappear from existence. For 4 mana, you can phase it out. And phasing it out is basically just boom, until the next turn, it's like it doesn't exist. It's not in the exile area, it can't be interacted with, but it keeps track of all counters, enchantments, everything like that, so it remains in that state. So it's this crazy, soul-swallowing building that can just poof, disappear from existence. Absolutely horrific. Moving on, we have got Grafted Identity, which is both horrific and an opportunity for me to say I was right. When we talked about the teaser cards, I said that there was no way that they were going to make a straight up forecasting cost you control enchanted creature enchantment. I said there was going to have to be some kind of drawback to it, and I was 100% right. There were some people who disagreed because they were like, control magic doesn't feel strong enough for standard. It's like, you don't understand. Like, control magic is essentially creature destruction plus you summoning the creature at the same time. If you can't do anything about the enchantment, it's literally like with the one spell, I've destroyed your creature and given myself that creature, right? So this right here may not seem that great. It's going to be just fine. You sacrifice a little creature that doesn't matter, and then you control the enchanted creature, and the enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Like, this is a very solid card that is going to see play, and I'll admit, I'm not a big fan of seeing something like this, because this is going to mess with my mono green deck. People are going to take my big green beauties, and I'm going to rage at the screen, let go of my toys! You know, like, that's the reaction I have to this kind of stuff. Anyhow, let's talk about how horrific this concept is. This is grafted identity. The flavor text says, autonomy is only skin deep. This is two beings grafted together. It's the being you want to control plus a creature that you summoned up. Basically, the way it looks to me is you're taking the face of whoever it was that, like, your sacrifice creature is the face, and it's like, I want to take his face off. Man, we're going all over the place with references. Nicolas Cage, John Travolta. If you haven't seen it, Face Off is a very fun movie. I recommend it. But anyways, you take the face off of a creature you've summoned up, and then you sew it on to another creature, and you control it. That is insane, right? Like, that's my interpretation. My interpretation is take the face, slap it on the body to control it, as opposed to if I just take your face and put it on another body, all of a sudden that body has all your powers. Like, for me, it has to be the face comes from your creature, the body is the creature you're stealing. This is absolutely a horrific concept for both individuals involved. The enchanted creature has had its will subsumed and is now being controlled by this other being. But the being you sacrificed, you brought that being into existence. You're like, hey, come here, man. And then you're like, let me borrow that face. Rip. Ka-chunk, 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 staple it onto another dude. That is amazingly intense. It's so dark and evil. I love it. It's so cool. But I'm not a fan of this card. I don't want to play against it. Next up, we've got more blue because there's a fair bit of blue in our horror show today, my friends. A fair bit of blue indeed. So we have the Curse of Surveillance. This is a very interesting card and something that obviously is aimed towards commander players. 1 blue and 4 for an enchantment or a curse. It's an enchant player, which is one of the most interesting kind of enchantments in my opinion. You know, like the idea of placing enchantments on artifacts or creatures or whatever is one thing. But as a planeswalker, crafting enchantments that you literally lay on another planeswalker is even crazier. It's like, I put the hex on you. Like that movie, Thinner. You know what I'm talking about? This is the reference episode, all right? We're going to talk about a lot of different random movies. Anyhow, 1 blue and 4 gets you an enchantment that says, at the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, any number of target players other than that player each draw cards equal to the number of curses attached to that player. So if you're playing a commander game, obviously this can make you a bunch of friends where it's like, yo, you want to be friends with me, I'll include you in the drawn cards party. But if you don't want to be friends with me, then I'm not going to include you. And it is interesting to note as well that it's still okay just in a one-on-one game. You know what I mean? Like if I'm just playing against you and I play this on you, I'm automatically getting an extra card every single turn just based on 1 curse. But these stack. So if I have 2 of these on you, then each of them is going to trigger each turn and give me 2 card draws. So all of a sudden, I'm drawing an extra 4 cards a turn. And that's where it really starts to feel like you move into the realms of craziness with this card, where the card draw can get absolutely bonkers. But for me, the power level of just playing 1, yeah, it's probably not good enough for standard. But something like my cube or other formats, 100% going to fit in. And if you choose to play any of the other curses, and there are some cheap curses. There are curses that only cost like 1 mana in this set. So you can easily set yourself up with a white-blue build, especially, where you could be drawing a ton of cards and just controlling the game effectively. So the horrific nature of this card comes into play mostly with the concept of the artwork, right? And actually, funnily enough, this kind of ties into the Army of Darkness concept to me as well, because in Army of Darkness, Buddy has an eyeball showing up out of his shoulder, and then that head rears up, and they're like running out into the forest, oh, howling at the moon, punching each other in the face. That stuff's so good, man. I love it. Good, bad, I'm the guy with the Curse of Surveillance. Or I guess you're the guy. Whatever. Anyways, let's not get too far aside here as I think about a million different things at once. Look at what's going on with this artwork, man. You have the idea, like the grasping hand. Like, look at the grip this guy has on his own hand. It's the grip of like, you're not going anywhere. Like one of your hands becoming cursed is a concept we've seen explored in a number of different horror movies. And it really is like high-level horror for me when your own body is turning against you. When you have to worry about the outside world, it's one thing. When you have to worry about yourself and your own form, it gets even crazier. And you know what else this reminds me of? If you haven't seen it and you like anime, Parasite Maxim. I'm not going to tell you anymore. If you've already seen it, you'll know why this ties in. If you haven't, I recommend you check it out because it's an amazing story that gets into the horror of what can go wrong with your own body in ways you would not expect. Anyhow, so you have the guy here and he's grasped his wrist his wrist in this intense fashion because eyes are sprouting from his hand. There's a big one in the palm, one down here, up on the thumb, one on the fingertip, and then look at the flavor text. Your first reaction when you see something like that, your body may just scream and go, get it out! And you start clawing at it like, oh my God, I've got demon hands or some kind of something's going on here. I gotta get this out of my flesh. But the flavor text says, for every eye gouged out, 2 blinked open. That's crazy, right? He gouges out the first eye, now there's 2 eyes. He gouges both of those out, now there's 4 eyes. Oh no. Oh no. You have to stop at that point. What do? Keep going until your entire body is covered in eyes like warts? Absolutely horrific and intense. Now, the next card we have to talk about is Spectral Adversary. 1 blue and 1 for a 2-1 Flash Flyer. This is a mythic rare. If you saw yesterday's video, we talked about some of these adversary cards. It looks like there's a cycle across all the colors. I'll actually, at the end of this video, I'll put a link to the Innistrad lore video, but I'll also put a link to a playlist with all my Innistrad Midnight Hunt spoiler videos. That way, if you want to, get up to speed on all the other ones, you can do so. So, Spectral Adversary, 2-1 Flash Flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay a blue and 1 any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many +1/+1 counters on Spectral Adversary, then up to that many other target artifacts, creatures, and or enchantments phase out. And like I said before, phasing out is similar to exiling, but it's just boom, you can't interact with the stuff, it can't do anything, it's going to come back next turn, right? So the idea behind this is clearly it's a sort of either stall out your opponent or give yourself an opening to swing in. Admittedly, this one doesn't feel quite as powerful as some of the other adversary cards to me. Like on the power level, it seems good. But the black one that makes all the 2/2 zombies, the white one that boosts all your guys, there's a red one that lets you play cards from your graveyard that didn't fit into the theme of this one because it wasn't horrific, so I didn't cover it in this video, but we may talk about it in the future. But either way, this feels like one of the less powerful adversaries from a straight-up strength level and requires a little more finesse. The fact that it has flash and you can play it on your opponent's turn to get a bunch of stuff out of the way for your turn is pretty solid overall, but it doesn't feel like right-in-your-face bonkers. The horrifying aspect of this card to me is you have this sort of like chain lantern Geist, right? Which is fairly standard issue for Innistrad. It's just made out of a bunch of whipping rags and lights and chains. It's got that kind of Ebenezer Scrooge, I'm coming up the stairway with the chain sort of thing. And that part, it does have a certain level of horror to it. But where it gets really horrific to me is this is the only Geist I know of that can just cause a bunch of things to cease to exist, right? And when you're phased out, you still exist. You're just not in phase with reality. So you're literally on a plane, the plane of Innistrad. And Innistrad has ghosts that are able to maraud around as if they're alive, right? So you know for a fact that ghosts can still interact with the physical world. And this ghost shows up, and all of a sudden, you and the other people of your village, you're phased out of existence. You still exist, and you can still see, to a degree at least, the real world, but you can't interact with it. So you know you can't be a ghost because Geists can interact with the world. So you're trapped in this horrific never zone, not knowing how long you'll be in there, exactly how you got there, what it means. Like your spirit's not even going to return to Innistrad. You've got no chance of being saved or resurrected. In the time you are spending in that phased out zone, that would be massively devastating to the mind. To me, that's where the truly horrific aspect of this card comes into play. And I dig it quite a bit. So, that wraps up the horrificness for the day, my friends. Like I said, put a link here at the end for the Innistrad lore video on my other channel and for the rest of the spoilers if you want to go and enjoy some more talking about magic cards with me. Thanks for coming by. If you liked the video, then like the video. If you love what I'm doing, jump on my Patreon. Big thank you to all my patrons. Goodbye for now. Go enjoy another video.